Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the navigation panel of his cargo ship, the Wandering Star. The old freighter was not much to look at, but she had carried him safely through space for 7 years. Today was supposed to be another simple supply run to Kepler Station, one of the mining outposts on the outer rim of human space. Jake needed the credits from this job to keep his ship running and food in his belly. The warning alarm, suddenly, started beeping on his control panel. Jake frowned and looked at the sensor display. Something was showing up on his screens that should not be there. Metal debris was floating in space ahead of him, lots of it. Jake had seen enough space battles during his time as a colonial marine to know what this looked like. He slowed his ship and moved closer to get a better look. The pieces of metal were not from human ships. These were different, made from some kind of blue-silver material that seemed to shine even in the darkness of space. The design was elegant and curved, nothing like the rough and practical ships humans built. Jake had never seen anything like it before, but he knew these had to be alien vessels. His heart started beating faster. First contact with alien species was something the government handled, not independent cargo pilots like him. Getting mixed up in alien affairs could mean serious trouble with the authorities. Jake knew he should report this to the nearest military station and stay away from the wreckage. But as he was about to turn his ship around, his sensors picked up something else. There was a small object among the debris that was still giving off power readings. Jake moved his ship closer and saw it was some kind of escape pod, damaged but still working. According to his scanners, there was a life form inside. Jake stared at the readings on his screen. Someone was alive in that pod, probably hurt and maybe dying. He had seen too many good people die during his military service to just fly away. Now, his conscience would not let him abandon whoever was trapped inside that pod, even if they were alien. He brought his ship alongside the escape pod and used the cargo bay's mechanical arm to pull it inside. The pod was beautiful, made from the same blue-silver material as the destroyed ships. Strange symbols were carved into its surface, and it hummed with energy that made Jake feel nervous. He had no idea what kind of technology he was dealing with. The pod's door opened with a soft hiss when Jake approached it. Inside was a person, but not human. The alien had blue-colored skin that looked like crystal and long silver hair. She was clearly female, wearing torn clothing that might have been some kind of uniform. Her breathing was shallow and weak, and Jake could see burn marks on her arms and face. Jake carefully lifted her from the pod and carried her to his ship's small medical bay. She was lighter than a human woman of the same size, and her skin felt warm but strange under his hands. He laid her on the medical table and started checking her injuries. The burns looked bad, and his medical scanner showed internal damage. That was beyond his basic field training. He did what he could with the supplies he had. Jake cleaned her wounds and used the ship's medical computer to help him understand what he was dealing with. The computer could not identify her species, but it suggested treatments that might work based on her basic biology. Jake worked for hours, using everything he knew from his military medic training. While she remained unconscious, Jake tried to learn more about what had happened. He searched through the debris field and found more pieces of the alien ships. The damage patterns showed signs of weapons fire, and from the way the metal was torn, it looked like the alien ships had been ambushed. Someone had attacked them without warning. Jake also found something else interesting in the escape pod's computer system. He could not read the alien language, but his ship's universal translator picked up some words. The unconscious woman was called Princess Lyra, and she seemed to be someone very important among her people. The computer also mentioned someone named Commander Crix, and something about a marriage that she was trying to escape. Jake realized he had rescued an alien princess, who was running away from something or someone. This made his situation much more complicated. If she was important enough to be called a princess, then other aliens would probably come looking for her. Jake knew he should contact the human authorities, but something made him hesitate. Looking at her lying unconscious on his medical table, Jake felt protective of this strange, blue-skinned woman. She looked so peaceful and vulnerable, and whoever had attacked her ships had tried to kill her. Jake made a decision that would change his life forever. He would take care of her until she recovered, no matter what problems it might cause him. He programmed his ship to take a longer route to Kepler Station, one that would keep them away from the main shipping lanes. Jake spent the next 2 days monitoring her condition and learning what he could about her species. The ship's medical database had some information about aliens with similar biology, and Jake discovered that humans and her people were surprisingly compatible in many ways. On the 3rd day, Princess Lyra finally opened her eyes. Jake was sitting beside the medical table, reading a book when he noticed her looking at him. Her eyes were a deep blue color, darker than her skin, and they showed intelligence and caution. She tried to sit up quickly but gasped in pain from her injuries. Jake gently put his hand on her shoulder to keep her from moving too fast. She flinched at his touch and said something in her own language that his translator could not understand. Jake could see fear in her eyes, but also confusion. She was probably wondering where she was and who he was. He spoke slowly and calmly, trying not to scare her more than she already was. Jake told her his name and explained that he had found her escape pod among the wreckage of her ships. He showed her the medical readings and explained how he had treated her injuries. Princess Lyra listened carefully, and Jake could see her trying to understand his words through the translator. The beginning of their strange relationship had started, though neither of them knew yet how much their lives would change because of this meeting in the darkness of space. Princess Lyra stared at the strange alien who claimed to have saved her life. She had never seen a human before, though her teachers had told her about these primitive creatures who had only recently developed space travel. This one, called Jake, looked different from what she had expected. His brown hair was messy and his clothes were simple, but his eyes showed kindness that surprised her. She tried to use her telepathic abilities to read his mind, but the injuries had weakened her mental powers. All she could sense from him was genuine concern and no desire to harm her. This confused Lyra because her people had always taught her that aliens, especially humans, could not be trusted. Jake showed her the medical readings on his computer screen and explained how he had treated her wounds. Lyra was amazed that this human had managed to save her life using such basic medical equipment. Even skilled Zephyrian doctors would have struggled without their advanced healing technology. She began to realize that humans might be more capable than her people believed. The universal translator helped them communicate, though it was slow and sometimes made mistakes. Lyra learned that Jake was a cargo pilot who lived alone on his ship, traveling between different worlds to make a living. He seemed to have no family or home planet, which made Lyra feel sad for him. In her culture, family and belonging to a place were the most important things in life. Jake brought her food and water, staying nearby in case she needed help but giving her space to recover. Lyra noticed that he never asked her for anything in return for saving her life. This was very different from what she had been taught about other species. Her teachers had said that aliens always wanted something in exchange for their help. The days passed and her strength returned. Lyra began to tell Jake about what had happened to her. She explained that she was the third princess of the Zephyrian Empire, and her father had arranged for her to marry Commander Thane Crix. Crix was a powerful military leader, but he was also cruel and violent. He had already killed 2 wives, who had displeased him. Lyra had tried to escape the arranged marriage by fleeing with loyal guards in a small fleet of ships. They had planned to reach a distant world where she could live in hiding, but Crix had found them and attacked with his battle cruisers. Her guards had died protecting her, and only her escape pod had survived the battle. Jake listened to her story with anger in his eyes. He told her that forced marriage was wrong and that no one should have to marry someone they did not want to marry. This surprised Lyra, because in her culture, marriages were always arranged by families for political reasons. The idea that someone could choose their own partner was strange to her. Jake also told her about human customs and beliefs while they traveled through space together. He showed her human music, which fascinated Lyra because Zephyrian music was very formal and structured. Human music had emotions and freedom that she had never experienced before. Jake also told her about human literature and the stories humans told about love and adventure. Lyra was especially interested in human ideas about romantic love. In her culture, marriage was about duty and politics, not feelings between 2 people. But humans seemed to believe that love was the most important reason to marry someone. Jake told her stories about humans who had given up everything for love, and Lyra found these tales both beautiful and confusing. During their journey, Jake proved to be an excellent pilot and a resourceful problem solver. When pirates tried to attack their ship, Jake outmaneuvered them using his knowledge of asteroid fields and his quick thinking. When the ship's life support system broke down, Jake fixed it using spare parts and creative engineering that impressed Lyra. She began to see that humans had qualities her people had never recognized. Jake was intelligent in a different way from Zephyrians. Where her people relied on advanced technology and telepathic abilities, Jake used creativity and determination to solve problems. He never gave up when things became difficult, and he always found a way to keep moving forward. Lyra also noticed that Jake treated her as an equal, not as a princess who needed to be obeyed or protected. He asked for her opinions and listened to her ideas. When she offered to help with ship repairs using her knowledge of energy systems, Jake was grateful for her assistance. This was very different from how Zephyrian males treated females in her culture. As they spent more time together, Lyra began to feel something she had never experienced before. She looked forward to their conversations in the ship's common area during the evening meals Jake prepared. She enjoyed hearing him laugh at her attempts to understand human humor. She felt comfortable and safe with him in a way she had never felt with anyone before. Jake seemed to be changing too. He smiled more often now and seemed less lonely than when she had first met him. He took care of her injuries with gentle hands and worried about her comfort and happiness. Lyra could sense through her recovering telepathic abilities that Jake's feelings toward her were becoming deeper and more complex. The ship's computer announced that they were approaching a neutral trading station called Crossroads. Jake explained that this was a place where many different species came to trade goods and information. He said they could resupply his ship there and figure out what to do next. Lyra realized that she had nowhere safe to go. The Zephyrian Empire controlled many star systems, and Crix's influence reached into most of them. If she tried to return home, her father would force her to marry Crix. If she tried to hide on a Zephyrian world, Crix would eventually find her. Jake offered to take her anywhere she wanted to go, but Lyra could see that he did not want her to. leave. She did not want to leave either. For the first time in her life, she felt free and happy. She was beginning to understand what humans meant when they talked about love, and she realized that her feelings for Jake were growing stronger every day. But Lyra also knew that their situation was dangerous. Crix would not give up looking for her, and he had powerful ships and many soldiers. If he found them together, he would kill Jake without hesitation. Lyra did not want to put Jake in more danger than she already had. As their ship approached the trading station, both Jake and Lyra knew that their time alone together was coming to an end. They would have to make decisions about their future, and those decisions would affect not just their own lives, but possibly the relationships between their two species. Neither of them was ready for what was about to happen, but they knew their lives had been changed forever by their meeting among the stars. The Crossroads trading station was unlike anything Lyra had ever seen before. Dozens of different alien species walked through the corridors, trading goods and information from across the galaxy. Jake helped her disguise her distinctive blue skin with a special cream that made her look more human-like. She wore simple clothes and kept her silver hair covered with a hood. Jake introduced her to the station traders as his translator and business partner. Lyra's knowledge of multiple galactic languages and her telepathic abilities made her incredibly useful in negotiations. She could sense when other traders were being dishonest or when they were hiding better deals. Within a few days, Jake had made more profit than he usually earned in several months. Working together felt natural to both of them. Jake's practical knowledge of trade routes and cargo values combined perfectly with Lyra's intelligence and diplomatic skills. They developed an easy partnership where each understood what the other was thinking without needing to speak. Lyra had never experienced this kind of teamwork before, and it made her feel valued in a way that her royal position never had. During their evenings in Jake's ship, they continued to learn about each other's cultures. Jake taught Lyra to play human card games and showed her movies on his small entertainment screen. Lyra was fascinated by human stories about ordinary people who became heroes through courage and determination. In Zephyrian culture, only those born into noble families were expected to do great things. Lyra shared her own knowledge of the galaxy with Jake, telling him about different worlds and alien species. She taught him basic Zephyrian meditation techniques that helped him stay calm during stressful negotiations. Jake was a quick learner, and Lyra enjoyed watching him master new skills. Their friendship was slowly becoming something deeper. Jake would catch himself staring at Lyra when she was concentrating on her work, admiring her intelligence and grace. Lyra found herself looking forward to their quiet conversations more than anything else in her day. When Jake accidentally touched her hand while passing her a cup of coffee, both of them felt an electric connection that neither could ignore, but their growing closeness was interrupted by dangerous news. Other traders at the station were talking about Zephyrian warships that had been seen in nearby systems. Someone was asking questions about a missing princess and offering large rewards for information about her whereabouts. Jake and Lyra both knew that Commander Crix was getting closer to finding them. The situation became critical when a group of bounty hunters arrived at the station. They were rough-looking aliens from different species, all carrying advanced weapons and scanning equipment. Lyra recognized their leader as Vex Thornbeard, a notorious criminal who worked for anyone willing to pay his high prices. Jake and Lyra tried to avoid the bounty hunters, but Vex's scanners eventually detected Lyra's Zephyrian biosignature despite her disguise. The bounty hunters cornered them in one of the station's market areas, demanding that Jake hand over the princess for the reward money. Jake stepped in front of Lyra protectively, even though he was outnumbered 5-1. He told the bounty hunters that Lyra was under his protection and that they would have to go through him to get to her. Vex laughed at the human's courage, but was impressed by his determination to defend someone he cared about. A fight broke out when one of the bounty hunters tried to grab Lyra. Jake's military training served him well as he fought to protect her, but he was outnumbered by professional fighters with better weapons. Just when it looked like he might be overwhelmed, Lyra used her recovering telepathic powers to confuse the bounty hunters and give Jake an advantage. Working together, they managed to escape from the bounty hunters and get back to Jake's ship. But they both knew they could not stay at the station any longer. Crix's forces would be arriving soon, and Jake's ship was no match for Zephyrian battlecruisers. As they prepared to leave Crossroads, Lyra made a difficult decision. She told Jake that she should surrender herself to save him from danger. Crix wanted her alive, so he would probably let Jake go if she gave herself up willingly. She could not bear the thought of Jake being hurt because of her problems. Jake refused to let her sacrifice herself. He told Lyra that he cared about her too much to let her marry someone who would hurt her. For the first time, Jake admitted that his feelings for her had grown beyond friendship. He said that he would rather die fighting beside her than live, knowing he had abandoned her when she needed him most. Lyra was moved by Jake's declaration, and she realized that her own feelings for him were much deeper than she had admitted to herself. She had fallen in love with this brave, kind human who treated her as an equal and valued her for who she was, rather than what she represented politically. Their conversation was interrupted by warning alarms from the ship's sensors. A massive Zephyrian battlecruiser had arrived at the edge of the system, and it was heading directly toward the trading station. Jake recognized the ship's design from his military database. It was the Dominator, Commander Crix's flagship. Jake immediately started his ship's engines and prepared to run, but he knew they had little chance of escaping from such a powerful warship. The Dominator had weapons that could destroy his cargo ship with a single shot, and its engines were much faster than the Wandering Star's outdated propulsion system. Crix's voice came over the communication system, demanding that Jake surrender Lyra immediately. The Zephyrian commander threatened to destroy not only Jake's ship, but also the entire trading station if his orders were not obeyed. Hundreds of innocent aliens would die if Jake continued to resist. Lyra begged Jake to let her go to Crix, but Jake had already made his decision. He told her that sometimes a person had to take risks for the things that mattered most. Jake had found something worth fighting for, and he was not going to give up without trying everything he could think of. Jake set course for a nearby asteroid field, hoping to use the floating rocks as cover from Crix's weapons. The Wandering Star was small and maneuverable compared to the massive battlecruiser, and Jake knew these asteroid fields better than most pilots. If he could reach the asteroids before Crix's ship caught them, they might have a chance to escape. The chase began as Jake pushed his ship's engines to their maximum power. Behind them, the Dominator fired warning shots that lit up the darkness of space with deadly energy beams. Lyra sat beside Jake in the co-pilot seat, using her telepathic abilities to help him sense the locations of asteroids they could not see on their sensors. As they raced toward what might be their only chance of survival, Jake and Lyra both knew that their relationship had changed forever. They were no longer just a human and an alien who had met by chance. They were partners who would face whatever came next together, no matter how dangerous it might be. Jake guided his ship through the asteroid field, with skill that amazed even Lyra. The floating rocks provided cover from Crix's larger weapons, but they also created a deadly maze that could crush the wandering star if Jake made even one small mistake. Behind them, the Dominator followed more slowly, its massive size making it difficult to navigate between the asteroids. Lyra used her telepathic powers to sense the positions of asteroids that were hidden from their sensors. Her mind linked with Jake's in a way that felt surprisingly natural and intimate. She could feel his determination and courage, while he could sense her trust and growing love for him. Working together this way made them more effective than either could have been alone. They managed to escape from the asteroid field and reach a remote human research station called Haven Base. The station was small and lightly defended, but it was officially human territory where Crix could not attack without starting a war between their species. Jake hoped they would be safe there while they figured out what to do next. The research station's commander, Captain Lisa Hayes, was an old friend of Jake's from his military days. She agreed to give them temporary shelter, but she warned Jake that he was in serious trouble with both human and Zephyrian authorities. The colonial administration wanted to arrest him for interfering in alien politics, while various Zephyrian factions were demanding that he return their princess. During their time at Haven Base, Jake and Lyra finally had a chance to talk honestly about their feelings for each other. The danger they had faced together had made them both realize how much they cared about each other. Jake told Lyra that he loved her and wanted to spend the rest of his life with her, no matter what problems that might cause. Lyra was deeply moved by Jake's confession, but she was also frightened by what it could mean. She explained to Jake that in Zephyrian culture, royal marriages had political consequences that affected entire star systems. If she married someone her father had not chosen, it could cause civil war among her people. Jake asked Lyra to teach him about Zephyrian marriage laws and customs. She told him about an ancient tradition that allowed a princess to choose her own husband if he could prove his worth through 3 sacred trials. The trials tested a man's strength, wisdom, and devotion to both the princess and her people. No alien had ever attempted these trials before, and Lyra was not sure if they would even be allowed. While they researched Zephyrian law together, they received disturbing news from Lyra's homeworld. Her 2 older siblings had died in separate conflicts, making her the direct heir to the Zephyrian throne. Her marriage to Commander Crix had become even more important to the military leaders who supported him. Without Lyra, Crix could not legally claim the throne when her father died. Jake realized that marrying Lyra would make him more than just her husband. It would make him a prince with political power in the Zephyrian Empire. This was a responsibility he had never imagined, but he was willing to accept it if it meant protecting the woman he loved. Their situation became more urgent when they learned that Crix had seized control of the Zephyrian capital while claiming that Lyra was dead. He was using her disappearance to justify harsh laws and preparation for war against neighboring alien species. Many innocent people were suffering because of his lies and cruelty. Lyra felt guilty about the problems her escape had caused for her people. She wanted to return home and challenge Crix's claims, but she knew she could not face him alone. Jake offered to go with her and attempt the ancient trials that would make him her legal husband and give him the right to challenge Crix's authority. Captain Hayes tried to talk them out of this dangerous plan. She pointed out that Jake would be walking into a trap on the Zephyrian homeworld where Crix controlled the military and could easily have him killed. But Jake had made up his mind. He told Hayes that some things were worth risking everything for, and his love for Lyra was one of those things. Jake spent several weeks preparing for the trials with Lyra's help. She taught him about Zephyrian combat techniques and the mental discipline required for their wisdom tests. Jake's human creativity and determination impressed Lyra, and she began to believe that he might actually have a chance of succeeding where others had failed. The hardest part of their preparation was not physical or mental, it was emotional. Both Jake and Lyra knew that attempting the trials could result in Jake's death. If he failed any of the 3 tests, Zephyrian law required that he be executed as unworthy. They might be saying goodbye forever when they left Haven Base. During their last night at the research station, Jake and Lyra made promises to each other about their future together. Jake told Lyra that he would rather die trying to be worthy of her love than live safely without her. Lyra promised Jake that if he died in the trials, she would never marry Crix or anyone else. She would spend the rest of her life fighting for the ideals Jake had taught her about freedom and individual choice. Captain Hayes provided them with a small, fast ship for their journey to the Zephyrian homeworld. She also gave Jake a military escort part of the way, with her own ship and crew providing protection until they reached the border of Zephyrian space. Hayes told Jake that his courage had inspired her and her crew, and that humanity would be proud of what he was trying to do. The journey to the Zephyrian homeworld took several days, during which Jake and Lyra continued to prepare for what lay ahead. Lyra taught Jake the formal words he would need to speak when requesting the trials, and she explained the political situation he would face when they arrived. Many Zephyrians would see him as an alien invader trying to steal their princess, while others might view him as a potential ally against Crix's brutal rule. As their ship approached the beautiful blue-green world where Lyra had been born, both of them knew that their lives were about to change in ways they could not predict. Jake was about to become the first alien in Zephyrian history to attempt the sacred trials of worthiness. Success would make him a prince and give him the power to help reform an empire, but failure would mean death and would leave Lyra at the mercy of her enemies. Looking at the planet growing larger in their view screen, Jake felt both fear and excitement. He had started this adventure as a simple cargo pilot trying to make a living, but now he was about to attempt something that could change the relationship between humans and aliens forever. Whatever happened in the trials, Jake knew he would face it with courage because he was fighting for love, justice, and the hope of a better future for both their peoples. The Zephyrian homeworld was more beautiful than Jake had imagined. Crystal towers reached toward the sky like frozen waterfalls, and the cities seemed to grow naturally from the landscape instead of being built on top of it. But Jake could also see the signs of Crix's harsh rule. Military patrols everywhere, and fearful expressions on the faces of the people they passed. When Jake and Lyra arrived at the royal palace, news of their return spread quickly through the capital city. Many Zephyrians gathered to see the human who dared to request the sacred trials for their princess. Some were angry and hostile, shouting that no alien should be allowed to attempt their holy rituals. Others were curious about this strange human who would risk his life for love. High Counselor Zara Veltar, Lyra's aunt, agreed to oversee the trials despite strong objections from Crix and his supporters. Zara was known for following ancient laws exactly as they were written, and the old traditions clearly stated that any being could attempt the trials if they truly loved a Zephyrian princess. The fact that Jake was human made the situation unusual, but it did not make it illegal. Commander Crix was furious when he learned that Jake had returned with Lyra. He had spent weeks telling everyone that the princess was dead and that he was the rightful heir to the throne. Now his lies were exposed, and his claim to power was threatened by a simple human cargo pilot. Crix demanded that Jake be arrested as a kidnapper, but Zara refused to break the ancient laws. The first trial was the test of strength, which would take place in the great arena where thousands of Zephyrians could watch. Jake had to prove that he was physically capable of protecting Lyra and her people. The trial was not just about fighting. It included tests of endurance, courage, and the willingness to sacrifice himself for others. Jake faced 3 different challenges in the arena. First, he had to fight a mechanical warrior that tested his combat skills and reflexes. The machine was programmed to fight like the greatest Zephyrian warriors in history, and it was stronger and faster than any human. But Jake used his military training and his knowledge of tactics to find the machine's weak points and defeat it. The second challenge required Jake to cross a dangerous obstacle course while carrying wounded Zephyrian civilians to safety. The course was designed to push him beyond normal human limits, with traps and barriers that seemed impossible to overcome. Jake's determination and refusal to give up impressed even his critics as he struggled to save every person he was given to protect. The final part of the strength trial was the most difficult. Jake had to choose between saving his own life and protecting a group of Zephyrian children from a collapsing building simulation. Without hesitation, Jake threw himself into danger to shield the children, even though it meant he might be crushed. His willingness to die for people he barely knew finally won over many of the watching Zephyrians. The second trial was the test of wisdom, which challenged Jake's intelligence and understanding of Zephyrian culture. He had to solve complex puzzles that had been used to test royal advisors for thousands of years. These puzzles required not just intelligence, but also an understanding of Zephyrian history, philosophy, and values. Jake approached the wisdom trials differently than any Zephyrian had before. Where Zephyrian thinking was formal and traditional, Jake used creative and unconventional methods to find solutions. His human perspective allowed him to see answers that Zephyrian minds might miss. He solved puzzles about leadership, justice, and the responsibility of rulers to their people. The most important wisdom question asked Jake what he would do if he had to choose between human interests and Zephyrian interests as a prince. Jake answered that a good leader should protect all innocent people, regardless of their species. He said that the real wisdom was in finding ways for different peoples to work together instead of fighting each other. The final trial was the test of devotion, which would prove whether Jake truly understood what it meant to serve Lyra and her people. This trial was interrupted when Crix staged a military coup, trying to seize power while the traditional leaders were distracted by the ceremonies. Crix's soldiers attacked the trial grounds, hoping to kill Jake and capture Lyra. The attack turned into a battle that tested everything Jake had learned about Zephyrian culture and values. He had to choose between escaping with Lyra to safety or staying to fight for people who still saw him as an outsider. Jake chose to stay and fight, leading the defense of the sacred trial grounds alongside Lyra's loyal supporters. During the battle, Jake's tactical skills and leadership abilities impressed the Zephyrian warriors who fought beside him. He treated Zephyrian soldiers as equals and listened to their advice about fighting techniques. His respect for their culture and his willingness to learn from them earned their respect in return. The battle ended when Jake challenged Crix to single combat, as was traditional in Zephyrian law. Crix was larger and stronger than Jake, and he had telepathic powers that Jake could not match. but Jake had learned to think unpredictably, using tactics that confused and frustrated the Zephyrian commander. The fight was long and brutal, with both warriors suffering serious injuries. But Jake's refusal to give up and his determination to protect Lyra gave him the strength to keep fighting when Crix expected him to fall. In the end, Jake's human unpredictability and stubbornness overcame Crix's superior physical abilities. With Crix defeated and all 3 trials completed successfully, Jake and Lyra were married in a ceremony that combined both human and Zephyrian traditions. Jake became Prince Consort of the Zephyrian Empire, but more importantly, he became Lyra's partner in reforming their society and building better relationships with other species. Their marriage became a symbol of cooperation between different peoples throughout the galaxy. Jake helped Lyra modernize the Zephyrian Empire, establishing new diplomatic relationships with humanity and other alien species. They created exchange programs that allowed young people from different worlds to learn about each other's cultures. Jake and Lyra also formed a new space fleet that included both human and Zephyrian ships working together. Their flagship, the Unity, became famous throughout the galaxy as a symbol of what could be accomplished when different species worked together instead of fighting. Years later, as Jake and Lyra stood on the bridge of their ship watching their mixed crews of humans and Zephyrians working side by side, they remembered the day when a simple cargo pilot had found a wounded alien princess among the wreckage of destroyed ships. That meeting had changed both their lives and had helped create a new era of peace and cooperation between the stars. Their love story had proved that the greatest adventures begin when someone decides to help a stranger in need, and that sometimes the most unlikely partnerships can change the entire galaxy for the better.